My name is Nadia Orel. I am 34 years old. I am sitting in a rented studio apartment on Clement Street in San Francisco, and the window is cracked open exactly 2 inches because I finally live somewhere where I get to choose how much air comes in. 14 months ago, I listened to 11 voicemail messages left by my husband, Marcus Orel. Not one of them said he was sorry. Every single one asked me what I planned to do with the photograph. Before I tell you what photograph, and why a man who watched me fall 40 feet down a ravine on Hawk Ridge Mountain was more afraid of one image than he was of a murder charge. I need to take you back to where this started. Not the mountain. Before the mountain. Before I became someone Marcus needed to get rid of. Before I get into what actually happened on that ridge, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story means something to you. Drop your city in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from tonight. Let me take you back to autumn of 2018. Delwater, Pennsylvania. Population 6,200. The kind of place where the church marquee changes its message every Monday, and everyone reads it and nobody talks about it. I had moved there for Marcus. That is the sentence I spent 3 years refusing to say out loud. I had moved there for Marcus. Left my apartment in Pittsburgh, left my graphic design clients, left my friend group, packed 2 suitcases and a portfolio case, and drove 94 miles east because Marcus Orel had said, quietly, over dinner at his mother's house. Delwater is where my opportunities are. I thought you'd understand that. I thought you'd understand that. He never raised his voice. He never needed to. We had been married 8 months at that point. The wedding had been his mother's production. 180 guests at St. Dominic's, a reception at the Riverside Grill, a dress I had not chosen. I told myself I was being flexible. I told myself that flexibility was a form of love. In Delwater, I worked remotely. I redesigned logos for small businesses and invoiced clients by email and sat in the second bedroom of our house on Alderbrook Lane, while Marcus built his financial consulting practice downtown. His name was on a sign. Mine was not on anything. The inciting moment was unremarkable. It was a Thursday evening in November. I had taken on a new client, a women's outdoor gear startup called Ridgeline Company, and the contract was worth $8,400. I mentioned it at dinner. I was proud. It was the biggest single contract I'd ever landed. Marcus put down his fork. "You didn't run that by me," he said. "It's my business," I said. "We're married," he said. His mother, Dora Orel, was at the table. She looked at her plate. His younger brother, Tom Orel, refilled his water glass. Tom's girlfriend, Priya Mehta, suddenly needed something from the kitchen. Their silence was the agreement, their absence from the room while still being in it. That was the wall I couldn't touch. Marcus did not yell about the Ridgeline contract. He was never a yeller. He was a tilter. He tilted his head slightly when he was displeased, and his voice dropped half a register, and he became very precise, very reasonable. That precision was the blade. "I'm not saying you did anything wrong," he told me 3 days after the dinner. "I'm saying we need to be aligned. I have a reputation in this town. What you do reflects on me. I'll tell you now so you understand the full picture." By that point, he had already been asking me to limit my social media presence, drop 2 clients he deemed distracting, and forward him my invoices for tax purposes. I had done all 3. Each ask had felt reasonable in isolation. The Ridgeline contract changed something in me, not dramatically, quietly. I started writing things down. I kept a small brown moleskin notebook, the kind with the elastic band and the ribbon marker, in the lining pocket of my winter coat. Every time Marcus made a request that felt off, I wrote it down with a date and a time. I didn't know then what I was building. I just knew I needed a record that was only mine. For 6 months, I complied with everything and wrote down everything. Then in April 2019, Marcus suggested we take a weekend trip to Hawk Ridge State Park. Just us. Celebrate our first full year in Delwater. Romantic. His word. I packed the moleskin out of habit. The trail was called the Calder Loop. 7 miles. Elevation gain of 1,400 feet. I had done harder. But 2 miles from the summit, at a point where the eastern face of the ridge drops away, and there is nothing between you and the ravine below except 40 feet of empty air and loose shale, Marcus stopped walking. He was ahead of me on the trail. He turned around, and I saw his face. Just let that sit. It was not the face of my husband. It was the face of someone making a calculation. I don't remember the next 3 seconds. I remember the sound, a short, sharp movement of gravel, and then I remember falling. And then I remember the ledge, 12 feet down, that stopped me. A rock shelf no wider than a bathtub jutting from the ravine wall. If it hadn't been there, I would have fallen another 28 feet onto loose scree. My right ankle was fractured in 2 places. 3 ribs were cracked. I had a gash above my left ear that bled steadily for 20 minutes. Marcus called 911. He was crying by the time the Rangers arrived. He held my hand while they strapped me to the stretcher. She slipped, he told them. I tried to grab her. Pause. I said nothing. Not because I believed him, because I needed to think. They airlifted me to Ridgecrest General Hospital. Marcus was there the entire time. Attentive. Pale. Terrified looking. He brought my parents in from Ohio. My mother, Carol Vesper, and my father, Gene Vesper, and he stood in the hallway and told them it was the most frightening moment of his life. My mother held his hand. I watched that from my hospital bed through the glass partition, and I understood with complete calm that I was on my own. I had $2,200 in a personal checking account Marcus didn't know about. I had the Ridgeline Company contract, which still had $4,100 outstanding on it. I had a fractured ankle, 3 cracked ribs, 11 stitches above my ear, and a moleskin notebook in the coat that a nurse had folded and put in a plastic bag labeled patient belongings. I also had 1 photograph, 2 weeks earlier, on the trail at Hawk Ridge, the planning trip Marcus had insisted on taking to scout the route. A hiker had passed us and offered to take our picture. Marcus declined, but the hiker's trail camera had been running. It was one of those automatic wildlife cameras mounted to a post at a scenic overlook, and it had captured us perfectly, Marcus standing behind me at the overlook edge, both hands raised, not holding me, not reaching for me. Raised, and his face, that face, fully visible. The hiker, whose name I later learned was Dennis Carraway, had emailed the Park Service with the image. The Park Service had filed it. I found out about it 6 weeks later from a ranger named Specialist Lena Park, who called me just to follow up on the incident. I was in a motel in Emerson, 3 towns over by then. I had left Alderbrook Lane on a Tuesday morning while Marcus was at his office downtown. I took 1 suitcase, the navy blue rolling bag I'd had since college. I took my laptop. I took the coat with the moleskin. I took the plastic hospital bag. I left his house key on the kitchen counter. I did not leave a note. The motel was $54 a night. I stayed 3 weeks. I ate grocery store sushi and instant oatmeal and called no one. I filed for separation through an attorney named Daniel Kwan, who worked out of a strip mall office in Emerson and who charged me a flat rate of $1,500. He did not flinch at my story. He had heard versions of it before. No emergency contact. That was the invisible cost no one tells you about. Every form, every doctor's office intake sheet, every apartment application. Who do we call if something happens to you? And the honest answer was, there is no one right now who is safe, no birthday calls. My 31st birthday passed in the motel room. I ordered a BLT from the diner 2 blocks away and ate it watching a documentary about migratory birds. Marcus told Delwater I had become erratic, unstable, that the fall had affected me psychologically. My parents believed him for 4 months. Then one morning, a Wednesday in September, almost 5 months after I left, I woke up at 7 a.m. in my new studio apartment in Emerson, above a dry cleaner on Pell Avenue that smelled faintly of solvent, and I lay there for a full minute before I realized I had not heard his voice in my head when I woke up. Not once. Not his tone. Not his particular way of making a question feel like a verdict. I lay there in the quiet above the dry cleaner, and I thought, there it is. That was the morning I understood what I had survived. If you're still here, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to get a lot more complicated. Marcus had no idea what was coming. There was no montage, just alarm clocks and spreadsheets and falling asleep with a textbook open on my chest. In Emerson, I rebuilt the design business from zero. Not the same clients. I started over deliberately. New name, Vesper Creative, which was my mother's maiden name and felt like reclaiming something. New portfolio, New rates, I raised my hourly from $65 to $110 and lost exactly 2 prospects who pushed back and felt nothing about losing them. My first real mentor in that period was a woman named Rhonda Stills. She ran a small marketing cooperative out of Emerson called The Workshop, and she found me through a referral from Daniel Kwan's paralegal, who mentioned I was a designer trying to rebuild. Rhonda was 61 years old, drove a dented green Subaru, and had built and sold 2 businesses. She did not treat my hunger as desperation. She treated it as inventory. You double-check everything, she said, after I delivered my 3rd project for her. Nothing gets past you. It's how I grew up, I told her. She nodded. She didn't ask for more. That became the thing. I checked everything twice. Contracts, invoices, scope creep, verbal promises. I built a paper trail for every client engagement, not because I was paranoid, but because I had learned, in the most direct way possible, that documentation is the difference between your word and the truth. Year 1, in Emerson, $41,000 gross revenue. Year 2, $78,000. Year 3, after I incorporated and took on 2 subcontractors, $134,000. I moved from the studio on Pell Avenue to a 2-bedroom on Whitmore Street. I bought a second-hand couch from an estate sale and 2 mismatched bookshelves from Goodwill and exactly 1 piece of art. A print of the Oregon coast that I found at a flea market for $8 in a small wooden frame that I repainted white. My ally in this period was a woman named Serena Kim, who I met at a freelancer meetup at the Emerson Public Library. Serena was a copywriter who had left a marriage of her own under circumstances she never fully detailed and I never fully asked about. We bonded over shared silence, literally. We would work at her kitchen table for hours, both on laptops and not speak. It was the most nourishing social arrangement I had ever experienced. The object I carried was the Moleskine. For 3 years, I did not reread it. I kept it in the wooden box, a small cedar box, about the size of a hardback book, that had belonged to my grandmother, on the top shelf of my closet. I knew what was inside. I was not ready for what rereading it would do. In January 2022, 3.5 years after I left Alderbrook Lane, Ridgeline Company, the outdoor gear startup, contacted me. They had grown significantly and wanted to rebrand. The new creative director was a woman named Asha Brennan, who had found my old portfolio through a cached link. We scheduled a call. It went well. At the end of it, she said, "We'd love to have you present at our brand launch event in April. It's in Portland. We're making it a bit of a ceremony, acknowledging the original creative contributors to the company's early identity." I said yes. That night, I took the moleskin out of the cedar box. I sat on the second-hand couch under the Oregon Coast print and I read every entry. Dates, times, his exact words, what I had thought and not said, how small I had made myself, incrementally over 14 months, each concession feeling like cooperation. I read it from beginning to end without stopping. Then I understood something I had not understood before. I had not been difficult. I had not been erratic. I had been a woman making a record because some part of her already knew she was going to need it. I put the notebook back in the cedar box. I did not cry that night. I made tea and I opened the Portland brief and I started designing. That was the reframe. That single quiet evening, Marcus found out through LinkedIn, in March 2022, Ridgeline Company posted a promotional item about their upcoming brand launch event, listing featured contributors. My name and the Vesper Creative logo were on the list. The post got 340 shares. I know Marcus saw it because his first voicemail arrived 16 minutes after the post went live. His voice on that first message was not the tilted, precise voice I had known. It was off balance. That tiny tremor you only hear when someone realizes that the story they've been telling has just been publicly contradicted. "Nadia, it's Marcus. I saw the congratulations on the work. I'd love to reconnect. I think there are things we left unresolved. Call me." That was the measured one. The rest were not. His mother, Dora Orell. "Nadia, this is Dora. Marcus is struggling. Whatever has happened between you two, he is still your husband legally, and I think you owe him a conversation. Call me back, please." His brother, Tom. "Hey, it's Tom. Look, I know things got bad. I just call him, okay, for the family." A woman I did not recognize. Hi Nadia, you don't know me. I'm a friend of Marcus's from the consulting group. He has spoken so highly of you. I think a lot of misunderstandings happened, and I thought maybe you'd want to hear from a neutral party. Marcus again, seventh message. I know about the photograph from the Park Service. I know you have it. We need to talk about what you plan to do with it. Please call me. There it is. Not I am sorry. Not I know what I did. Not I was wrong. The photograph. That was what the 11 voicemails were actually about. I listened to all 11 in one sitting on a Saturday morning with a cup of coffee and the window cracked 2 inches. Then, I saved them all to a folder on my laptop labeled March 2022. Then I forwarded them to Daniel Kwan. Then I packed for Portland. The Ridgeline Company brand launch was held on April 9, 2022, at the Belmont Hall event venue in Portland, Oregon. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, 200 attendees, press, buyers, partners, and contributors from the company's history. I had been asked to speak for 8 minutes about the original visual identity I had built for them in 2018. My name was on the program. My face was on the event website. I had prepared my remarks carefully. I did not know Marcus would be there. He had been brought in through the consulting side. A mutual contact had arranged for his financial consulting firm to be introduced to some Ridgeline investors attending the event. Someone had thought this was a good idea. Nobody had thought to tell me. I saw him from across the room when I walked in at 6:47 p.m. He was standing near the bar in a gray jacket, talking to 2 men in suits, laughing at something. He had not seen me yet. I went to the green room, set down my portfolio, and stood in front of the mirror for 90 seconds. Then I walked back out and did my job. When I took the stage at 8:15, I saw the exact moment Marcus registered who was at the podium. He was seated in the 4th row. His face did what faces do when the brain is receiving information that contradicts its model of reality. It went still. Not shocked. Still. The kind of stillness that is actually rapid calculation. His first instinct was to look around the room. Who was watching him? Who was watching me? That is what I noticed. Not emotion. Inventory. I spoke for 8 minutes about visual identity and brand trust. I talked about how the early marks of a company carry the values of the people who believed in it before there was proof it would work. I said, the things built under pressure, in uncertainty, without resources, those are usually the things that last. I was not speaking to Marcus, I was speaking the truth. Everyone in that room understood both things simultaneously. The applause was long. Afterward, near the exit, Marcus found me. His mother was not there. His brother was not there. There was no audience to manage. And without an audience, he was just a man in a gray jacket with no lines prepared. Nadia, he said. Marcus, I said. There was a pause. He attempted the tilt. I watched him attempt it and not land it. I think we should talk, he said. About everything. There's nothing to talk about, I said. His composure cracked just slightly. The photograph is with my attorney, I said. Has been since 2019. Dora Orell appeared at his left elbow. She had been at the event. I hadn't known, and she had seen my speech. Her face was a complicated document. Nadia, she said, this family has always... Dora, I said, not unkindly. I wish you well, I do. Tom appeared behind her. He opened his mouth and then closed it. I looked at all 3 of them. I let the silence sit for exactly 4 seconds. Then I said, I'm going to go find my friends now. And I did. I walked across that room to Asha Brennan and Serena Kim, who had driven down from Emerson, and we ate overpriced appetizers and drank cheap Prosecco, and I did not look back once. That night, from my hotel room, I sent one email to Marcus Orell. It was 247 words. It was controlled and specific and contained exactly 0 emotional language. It named what had happened on the Calder Loop Trail on April 14, 2019. It named the photograph and its location. It named the voicemails and their content. It stated what I would not do. I would not contact media. I would not contact his clients. I would not initiate any further legal action unless he contacted me again. It left one conditional door open. If he ever chose to acknowledge, in writing, what had occurred on that trail, not to me, but to a therapist, a clergyman, anyone, I would consider that acknowledgement in whatever future context it arose. Then I turned off my phone. I slept 9 hours straight. The first 9-hour sleep I had had in 4 years. I did not orchestrate what happened next. I want to be clear about that. The Park Service photograph, which specialist Lena Park had originally filed as a routine incident record, became part of a separate inquiry that I was not party to. 3 months after Portland, a colleague of Marcus's at the consulting firm filed an HR complaint about his conduct. During the investigation, the firm's attorney pulled public records. The photograph appeared in those records. Marcus resigned from the Delwater consulting practice in August 2022. The sign with his name came down. I know this because Tom Morell sent me a text message. 7 words, "He's gone. I'm sorry I said nothing." I read it twice. I did not respond for 6 days. Then I wrote back, "I know. Thank you for saying so." That was the whole exchange. It was not enough to repair anything. It was not nothing either. Dora Orell called my mother in September. I don't know what was said. My mother, Carol Vesper, called me afterward and was quiet for a long time on the phone and then said, "I should have listened to you faster." She was crying. I was not. We stayed on the line for 47 minutes without talking much. Sometimes that is what repair looks like. My father, Gene Vesper, drove to Emerson in October. He brought a bag of groceries, the specific groceries he had always bought when I was sick as a child: chicken soup, saltines, ginger ale, a paperback thriller. He was not a man who could say what he should have said. The bag of groceries was him saying it. I let him in. We ate soup. He slept on my second-hand couch. Priya Mehta, Tom's girlfriend, who had left the kitchen that night at dinner rather than witness anything, sent me a card in November, handwritten, no return address. It said only, "I saw it happen and I stayed silent, and I have thought about that every day since. I am truly sorry." That one I kept. I put it in the cedar box. Marcus himself never wrote, never called after Portland. The conditional door I had left in my email is still open. I do not expect him to walk through it. Some things end without resolution. That is not the same as ending wrong. In March 2023, I established a small fund through the workshop, Rhonda Still's cooperative, called the Vesper Grant. It runs annually. It provides $3,000 to one woman-owned creative business in its first year of operation, specifically those who are rebuilding after a period of financial or personal disruption. The application does not ask for details. It asks only, "Where are you going?" The grant is named for my grandmother, Ruth Vesper, who left her first marriage in 1962 with 2 children and $80 and remade her life entirely in a city where she knew no one. She never spoke about it directly. She made excellent soup and kept a very clean house and laughed at things that other people missed. I named it for her because she had no language for what she had done. I do. And now so does the woman who wins it each year. Last November, Serena Kim hosted Thanksgiving at her apartment on Whitmore Street. 6 of us around a table that seats 4, with a folding card table pushed against one end. The plates did not match. 2 were from Serena's grandmother's set, yellow with a blue border, and the rest were white IKEA plates and one plate that was clearly from a hotel somewhere. The wine was $9 from the corner store. Someone brought a pie that was slightly burnt on one edge. We ate around the burnt part. Asha Brennan was there. Rhonda Stills was there. A new friend, a landscape architect named Tomas Rivera, who had only moved to Emerson 8 months ago and already felt permanent. Serena's cat, Billy, walked across the table twice and was not corrected. I sat at the far end of the folding table and I looked at all of them, talking, arguing about something on television, passing the green bean dish that had too much garlic, and I felt seen in a way that I cannot fully articulate, not seen as a survivor, not seen as someone who had made it through something, just seen. As a person in a room with other people who chose to be there. I thought briefly about a different table, Alderbrook Lane, the white china, the silence that passed as decorum, the way my fork felt heavy when I set it down. Then the burnt pie arrived and Tomas said something that made everyone laugh and I came back to this table, this one, the one I built. If you're still listening, I want to say something directly to you. Maybe you recognize the mechanics I described. The reasonable requests, the incremental concessions, the way one person's voice can occupy so much space in your head that you stop being able to hear your own thoughts clearly. Maybe you've been called unstable, erratic, difficult, ungrateful, too sensitive, too ambitious. Those words have a specific sound. They're the sound of someone trying to keep you inside a story they wrote for you, and you're threatening to step outside the frame. Here is what I know to be true. The notebook you start keeping because something feels wrong. That is not paranoia. That is precision. The discomfort you feel at a dinner table where your good news is treated as a provocation. That is information. The voice in your head that says, this is not right, that voice is yours and it is trying to help you. You don't have to yell to leave. You don't have to convince anyone. You don't have to win an argument. You just have to go. And then you have to keep going. One alarm clock at a time. The rest follows. I want to ask you one question before you go. If the person who hurt you most called you tomorrow, after years of silence, after everything, what do you think the first thing they'd say would be? Would it be help me, or would it be I'm sorry? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. I read them on Saturday mornings with coffee and a cracked window. And I think about every person who took the time to answer. If this story stayed with you, there are more on this channel. Different people, different circumstances, the same quiet insistence on surviving. Check the playlist. Subscribe if you haven't. Thank you for listening tonight. I'll see you in the next one.